Okay. Um, Morning, everyone. Or actually, good anytime it is when you're watching this. So today, I did some updates onto the jumping system of the ball game. As you can see on the screen right now, I've been messing with these purple surfaces for a little while. Basically what these are is trampolines, meaning when you hit them, they will give you back the same amount of velocity that you hit them with. So they're really bouncy materials. And that allows you to do quite a lot of things. The first of which would be to allow the player to reach really long distance using like super long jumps. I'm gonna show you right now the jumping changes I've done. Okay, the other thing is, if you hit it, it'll actually throw you. So that the faster you hit this, the further it'll throw you. And so this could be a good way of forcing the player to calculate their jumps better, so that they don't land too far and they don't actually get thrown back from the stopper. And so these are the trampoline materials. And so what I did to the jumping is, before this little update, the player was always jumping up. So I would check if the bottom of the ball was touching the ground. And hello Jordan, glad to see you looking at the stream, even though it's kind of soon in the morning. And so yeah, before I was just using a line trace to check if the ground was underneath the ball, and if it was, I would, throw the player up. Now what I do is I check the collisions on the ball and add velocity in whatever direction is opposed to where the ball is colliding with anything. So if you're rolling into a wall and you jump, you're just gonna jump away from that wall. So this allows you to do this, which you never would have been able to do before. And which is kind of cool, I think. Well, that's actually going to be a part of level 6. Basically, anytime I add a new feature to the little ball game, I add a new level that allows to demonstrate that new feature. So yeah, adding new levels to the game is a pretty important part of the process for me. And so without further waiting, I should probably show you how I did this new jumping method. I'm just gonna try and do it one more time because I have such an ego. And there I go. Okay, cool. So yeah, you see it's possible. It's kind of frustrating because it's hard to jump at the exact right moment in the curve to be propelled onto the platform. But as I said before, frustrating means addictive, which is one of the only selling point of such a simple game. So this could be a good thing to an extent. As long as it doesn't get so frustrating that it actually discourages players. That said, and yeah, you can actually jump off walls now. Just like, oh, and from the ceiling as well. If I just hit the ceiling, I can jump off the ceiling. And as you can see, I've added a little particle effects really simple. I just did that. I'm still learning particle effects, so I'm not gonna do a tutorial about them until I get better than that, of course. So, okay, player jumping. This is what the new jumping code looks like. Yep, I know what you're thinking. That is a hot mess. I did not take the time to actually sort it out, make it readable. I probably should have. Yeah, kinda sorry about that. Now, if you don't have any particle effects, you can completely scrap this, which makes it a little easier. So basically, we already were using the event hit to know if the player hit the red ground, so that when he hits the red ground, he dies, basically. And so what I did was just use the hit event to get the hit location, not the impact point, the hit location. I was using the impact point, but it was giving me some kind of weird results. So I've decided to switch to the location instead, and it works much better. It actually works perfectly how I want it to work. So good. Okay, so getting the location of the impact minus the location of the ball itself, which gives me a vector length. So that's basically the distance in between the center of the ball and the impact point. And all I do is I get the component bounce, which is gonna give me the sphere radius of the physic asset, which I had to multiply by 1.5 because that value wasn't actually right at all. And so I'm just making sure that the impact point is not further away than the actual radius of the sphere, because even if the sphere doesn't collide with anything, the hit event still fires up and still give me a location, which is the last hit location. So I have to make sure that we're still hitting that location before allowing the player to jump. And that is how I do it. So plug that into a branch, and if it's true, that means we're touching something, and we're gonna jump off that something by adding an impulse with velocity changes. Basically, the reason I always check velocity change is because doing that makes the code completely ignore the mass of the object. And so that allows use of a lot smaller numbers for the velocity. Like if I uncheck that, I would need to add at least 4 to 5 zeros after that 1500. And so yeah, just to keep the numbers smaller, I'm checking that box all the time. And so the way that I know in which direction to add the impulsion for the jump is I get the look at rotation from the center of the sphere to the location of the hit. And then that rotation I transfer into a vector, which I multiply by the amount of velocity I want to apply for the jump. And I just plug that into the impulse. So it's actually quite a lot simpler than it looks like. And yeah, this is the new jumping. So this allows you, of course, to jump off any surfaces. See, for example, if I wait to be into the corner before jumping, it'll actually make me jump at an angle. And of course, I can jump off walls. which opens up for more possibilities for level design, like that, basically. Oh. And another thing that this did is that onto level 3, see here, that slope, I have to jump from that slope to get to the goal, but I'm actually jumping sideways now because I'm jumping from a slope. And so whoop, 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 whoop. See, for example, if I jump now, and so I have to actually go to the very top because it makes me jump sideways because of the angle. It actually jump off the angle. And so yeah, that allows for new challenges. See, for example, here, if I roll onto the side of the cylinder and jump, it'll throw me completely to the opposite direction, which allows me to jump on there and actually skip the enemies, or not. And so yeah, that's a nice little thing to add. And what this also opens up as a possibility is to have some zones of your levels have custom gravity. Like, for example, have an object with a radius that if the player is within the radius, he overrides the gravity to be attracted by that object instead of being pushed down. And so doing that would make you able to have the ball sticking to the ceiling, and so jumping would have to happen downward instead of upward. And so having the jump system like that is gonna allow you to do this, basically. So yeah, just a little short update. It's kind of late for me, and so I'm not gonna make this stream too long. I just did the jumping off camera because I wasn't too sure how I wanted to do it, and I didn't want it to create a 2-hour long video for such a small feature. And so yeah, now you know how to do it, and yeah, that's it. You know how to do it. So yeah, I'm just gonna stop the stream there. 13 minutes is plenty long enough for this little update. So as always, thanks for watching. I hope you're enjoying the videos I do. I see you're not posting any comments ever on the videos, so yeah, don't be afraid to do so. I'm actually reading the comments every day when I see people posting, and I try to answer your questions as much as possible. And yeah, all these comments are really appreciated. I still get a lot of questions about the vehicle system. I'm gonna say it again. Yes, I will make more videos about vehicles. I know you want them. I know I can make them. So Jordan, can you make next tutorial about speed boost? Well, now that you mentioned that, I could actually do that right now, because that's a really simple thing to do. Now, by speed boost, do you mean like a buff that for a certain time the ball is gonna spin faster, or do you mean like I hit the trigger zone and the ball get propelled forward like super fast, like jumping but onto the horizontal? Yeah, time faster, first one. Okay, so I I guess there would be need to have a way to activate that buff, which could be an object pickup, or which could be zone related. Like for example, a certain surface type would allow the player to spin faster. That could be a good way to do it. But just so you know, because you asked, the speed value of the player is actually that variable. You know, movement velocity. Now it's up to 50 if I put it up to 150, just to show you. See, the ball is actually 3 times faster, which is kind of hard to control, honestly. So yeah, all you really need to do is to actually set that variable at runtime. Speed buffs on object pickup. Okay, how I'm gonna do that is I'm gonna have a new variable, which is gonna be a float variable. And I'm gonna have to add that to the title of the video, actually. And that'll be speed buff. And that variable is gonna be how much speed we add to the player when the buff is activated. And let's say we had 150. So instead of 50, we're getting 200 while the buff is activated. Oh, and also movement velocity should be editable and exposed on spawn. Should have done that before, and that would allow you to change the speed of the player onto the spawn so that each level can have a different movement speed if you want to. You don't have to actually modify this variable. But yeah, this will allow you to change this variable per level instead of creating different blueprints. So, okay, speed buff should also be editable and exposed on spawn. And we're gonna need to also, oops, and I spelled that wrong. Buff. Okay, we're also gonna need a duration. So speed, I did it again. Speed buff duration. And this is basically gonna be how many seconds the buff will be activated. So let's say it'll be activated for 5 seconds, just for test purposes. Okay, we're just gonna pick an empty spot, create a custom event, add custom event, speed, oh, I can't name it like that. Okay, so event underscore speed buff. Okay, cool. So what this is gonna do, it's movement velocity. Yeah, I'm using the movement velocity here. Okay, gonna need another variable, which will be default movement velocity. And actually, this is gonna get really messy if I exposed all of these onto the spawn. Like real messy real fast, because I think I'm gonna have to add more values than that. So the default should be the same as movement speed. Alright. movement velocity, sorry about that. And so when the speed buff is activated, you set the movement velocity to be equal to the default movement velocity plus the speed buff. Alright. So now the movement velocity which we use here to make the ball spin is going to be the default movement velocity plus the speed buff. Or that could actually be a multiply if you like it too, it doesn't really matter. Like you could just multiply it by 4 instead of having 150 to the 50, you know. So that could be a way to do it too. And then you're going to have a delay. The duration of that delay is going to be the speed buff duration. And then as soon as that delay is done, after the end of the 5 seconds, what you're going to do is you're going to set the movement velocity back to only the default movement velocity. Alright? And so that would be your speed buff. Now we're going to need a pickup for that actual speed buff. And so I'm going to go back to the default map to get a little more space to test all of that. Okay. I'm actually going to have to make that floor the ugly yellow. Because, yeah, otherwise it just slips. Now, this is really kind of hurting my eyes. I don't like having so much yellow. But for the speed buff, we're gonna have to deal with it. And so, okay, into an environment. I guess I'll have to create a new folder because this is not a trap. Actually, this is, yeah, this could be just in the blueprints. Okay, blueprint class, extended from actor, just like you did for the gold blueprint. Now that'll be speed, which I always spell wrong. Speed buff pickup blueprint. Now that's a really long name. So we're gonna need a mesh to collide with, or a trigger zone for that matter. Yeah, let's have a trigger zone for a change. So let's say, what kind of options do we have in terms of collision primitives? Collision box, capsule, yeah, okay. Since we're onto the theme of a sphere game, we're gonna have the collision be round. Half height. Yeah, I'm gonna have to make that 500. Yeah, okay. Boom. Voila. Just gonna pop that into the map real fast. Make sure I didn't make it too big. Now that seems to be about a perfect size. And just to let the player know that it's actually there, we're gonna add a text component, text render, sorry about that, which only text will be speed buff, as you might have guessed. And we're totally gonna copy and paste the text rotation part of this code. Set world rotation like so, and I'm gonna have to get the player pawn like this as well. Whoa, I actually pasted the nodes into the comment. So event tick. Now we don't need showtime. player ball variable doesn't exist just yet. They can play, and voila. Now I know, delete that. Promote variable. New var0 will be renamed into player pawn. Okay, cool. So we now have a zone with text in it, which is not visible for some reason. Oh, well, it's kind of small, I guess, huh? Oh yeah, and kind of off center as well. It's also, okay, X scale. Let's make it 5 by 5. Something like that. Raise it up a tiny bit. That's more visible. I should make it red too, I guess. Text render color. Good. That's gonna be a nice visible red. And why is it not showing? I have something in the, nope. Oh, of course. Sorry about that. Okay, cool. So now the text is actually following the player, so that no matter where you are in the world, you can read it. See that little... That was kind of neat. Okay, now what we need to do is to grab that, make sure it's generating overlap events, and onto component, component begin overlap. We're gonna add that to the graph. The other actor get tags, and is this actually how I do it? Yeah, okay, cool. Make sure the player you're overlapping with contain player tag. Make sure you're not trying to apply a speed buff to an enemy, for example, which would be kind of a big deal actually. If it worked, of course it's not gonna work because the enemies don't add the speed buff custom event onto their code. But yeah, if they did, applying a speed buff to the enemies would be kind of a dirty trick to get the player killed. Which I might actually do eventually. So okay, now we just made sure that the other actor was a player, so we're gonna cast it to the ball, ball pawn. Now this cast will actually give us access to the speed buff function, and so speed event speed buff. Awesome. Now one thing we should do is event thick. Where is it? Oh, that's not the ball blueprint. Now we don't need the goal blueprint. Cool. Also make sure that the ball is generating overlap event. I know it should be, because we're using overlap events for the game zone, but just make sure it does anyway. I'll be right back grabbing a glass of water. Okay. I'm not usually someone who speaks a lot, so these live streams are actually killing my throat so much, so What was I saying? Oh yeah, the overlap event. So, like, I know they should be enabled, and they are, but just make sure they are. That's really important. And so the speed buff here could have some inputs. For example, two float variables, one of which would be buff amount and buff duration. So what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna use these instead of the variables. So buff amount, well, we're actually gonna do this like that. So the buff amount will be provided by whatever triggers the event instead of, and so speed buff can be deleted, speed buff duration as well, yes I know it's in use, and buff duration should also be set by whatever triggers the buff. Okay, that looks good. Yep. All right. So we're gonna create these variables onto the speed buff pickup instead of onto the player. So there again, two new float values. One of which is gonna be buff amount. Yeah, that's actually two M's, and buff duration. Good. And these two variables will be editable and exposed on spawn, like so. And we're just gonna plug them in there, like that. So default buff amount, I said, was 150, and default buff duration I said would be 5 seconds. Awesome. So what this allows us to do is to select the speed buff pickup into the map, and into the default section select how much speed amount we want the buff to be and how long we want it to last. And so each speed buff pickup can have different values. So we're just gonna need to test it, make sure it actually works. So that is how fast I go, and that is how fast I go now, which is a lot faster, I think. Now I'm just gonna have a print string there, just to make sure it actually triggers. It doesn't trigger at all. Oh, no, it just did. And I don't seem to be going any faster, which is kind of weird. Okay, let's just set this to a totally ridiculous value. Like default movement should be 1, and width buff should be 150. What? Wait a minute. Default movement velocity. Ah. Okay. Okay, now this is a movement velocity of 1, which is absolutely horrible. Oh, we're never gonna make it to there. So what I'll do is I'll set it to 10. Okay, now this is slow enough that we should notice a difference. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay, cool. So yeah, speed buff is working. See, it just ran off. It just ran out. Sorry about that. Now we're super fast. Now, boom, super slow again. So yeah, speed buff is working. So you can now place these all over the map. Have any visuals you want, and there are speed buffs, you know. So boom, super fast. And now, of course, the speed you're going at is affecting the length of the jumps, obviously, which could also be used in level design. For example, you could place a speed buff somewhere on the map, have it last just long enough so that you can quickly go to that spot. You need a super long jump that you wouldn't actually be fast enough to make without the buff. And so this could force the player to go pick up the buff and rush to that spot to be able to make the jump before the buff ran out. So that's yet another option. You just opened yourself into level design. And so it's pretty interesting, I think. Thanks Jordan for the idea. That's kind of the reason I want you guys to post comments on my videos, because I know some of you are gonna have some super cool ideas, and I want to read about them. So yep, if you have anything else, Jordan, just say it. That was actually a really good suggestion. Now, another thing I should do is, onto the event begin play, is I should set the movement velocity to be the default movement velocity. Good, so I can actually leave the movement velocity to 0 and only change one variable instead of two when I want to change the speed of the players. When it's ball on that material, it slows down. Okay, so you'd want actually a you'd want a surface type that would slow the player down, like it's kind of sticky and it prevents the ball from spinning fast enough, something like that. And good morning, Unreal Engine 4 Espana. Alright, I guess we could do that. Some kind of... I try to find the word in English, you know, whatever, slow down the ball when onto a certain material. Oh, that's a really neat idea as well. I can remove the print string right there. And so now speed buff should be also used as a negative. Yeah, okay, yeah, because plus with a negative is gonna reduce the movement velocity. Okay, what I'm gonna need to do is use the event thick, actually, which I don't think I'm using at all yet. Nope, wasn't using it at all. And actually, just so you know, it's quite a bad practice to use the even thick, unless you absolutely need to. I would encourage you a lot to use timers instead of the even thick. Now, the only time you should really use the even thick is for interps. Like you want to smoothly go from a value to another value, using interp, rinterp, finterp, whatever interp you like. You should be using even tick for that, and only that. Because just know that any code you put into the even tick is going to be executed every frame. Meaning if you have 100 FPS, whatever code you put in there would be executed 100 times per second. So if it's a heavy code, this could involve a lot of lag, which you could prevent by using timers instead to make that code happen less often. So yeah, I'm actually not going to use the even tick at all, just to demonstrate that the proper way to make this. Can you make a boolean if this ball and that material set speed and that speed is not that? Yep, that's exactly what I plan on doing, Jordan. But first we need to have a line trace to check the physical material we're onto, to know if we're onto that material or not. Wait, what? That's a lie. We're actually using the event hit right here, which has a physical material. Oh no, that's fantastic. We're gonna use that instead of a line trace. So okay, what we're gonna do is we're gonna add a sequence onto the event hit. So we're not actually gonna use event thick or a timer either. We're gonna use the event hit directly. What we're gonna do is use an equal node, so a branch, hit component, physical material equal, plug that into true, and we're gonna need to create a new physical material for that purpose. So surface type, we'll make it identical to the ground concrete, except we're gonna call it ground slowdown, like that. So this ground is actually gonna act just like the concrete does, and we're gonna need to create a new material for that as well, which we're gonna call material slow down, and we're gonna give it another distinctive color so that the player can know that it's one of these zones. We're actually gonna make it white just because I'm kind of running out of colors there. Okay, oops, I did forget to apply our new physical material, which is ground slowdown, onto the slowdown material. Alright. So now I'm just quickly trying to find a way of preventing conflicts from the slowdown material with the speed buff. Like, how am I gonna deal with both these things at the same time? So okay, onto the event hit we get is the thing we're hitting actually using this physical material. If it is, we're gonna set the speed to a lower, and if it's not, we're gonna set the speed to normal. So actually I think I have my idea. Set movement velocity, set default movement velocity, get default movement velocity. I think these are going to be all we need. We're actually going to need 2 of these. Yeah, now the thing is, I would just change the movement velocity there, and it would work until you get a speed buff. And that speed buff would completely cancel the... No, actually it would cancel it for 1 frame, and then because the hit event fires off constantly, you would immediately reapply the smaller speed. Okay, yeah, this could actually work. So what we're gonna do is, if it's false, we're gonna make it to the default movement velocity. Yeah, that's gonna completely break the it's gonna completely break the speed buff. Okay, we're actually gonna need a do once here. Start closed and have the true, so we're gonna need a sequence onto the true. Something like that. And make a good use of the reroute node. Okay, so what this is currently doing is we're checking if we're actually rolling onto the slowdown material. If it's false, we set the movement speed back to the default movement speed once and not constantly, because if we did it constantly, the speed buff wouldn't work at all, and that would kind of suck because we just did it. And so when we do roll onto the slowdown material, it opens up that gate, and then when we stop and that turn false, we set the default movement to the default, and then that gate close, and so we only set it 1 and we can still use the speed buff. But if it's true, we're actually gonna set the movement velocity to the default movement velocity minus a certain value. Minus, let's say 25, so we're gonna cut the speed in half. And hopefully that should work just fine. And so to give that a good test, we're gonna make that speed buff quite a lot more noticeable, just so that we can make sure that it wasn't broken. And I think it is broken somehow. It shouldn't be though. Or maybe the ball is just really overspinning. Maybe 500 was too much. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna use the even thick, even though I told you you shouldn't do it. Just for debug purposes. And I mixed default and movement velocity. Nope, that's actually the way I wanted it to be, because we're setting the movement velocity, which is the movement we're using to make the ball spin, and the default value should never be set to a different value, because it's actually a reference to be able to set the movement velocity back to normal. And so that default movement velocity never should be set to a different value. So that's completely normal. Now what we're gonna do is we're just gonna print the movement velocity on the screen, because that's the value we use to make the ball spin. Okay, so the speed buff works. We went from 50 to 300 and then back to 50. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna apply my new surface type, no, my new material, the white material, onto this ramp here, just to piss the player off. Good. And so doing that should make the velocity go to 25, which it doesn't. Okay. I'm just gonna add some more print string just to make sure that the events actually do fire up. And it doesn't, so that means our branch here never ever returns true, which is not normal. So that would mean that physical material here does not work for some reason. I'm actually gonna have a print string for that as well. Get display name. Okay, I guess that's gonna have to do. So I'm now onto ground concrete. I'm now onto ground slowdown. Yet, even though I am onto ground slowdown, this here never returns true, which is not cool. Get display name equal string, yep, that would be m slow down. Now is this gonna change anything? Certainly hoping it will. Nope, not doing anything at all. Still at 50. Okay, so that just doesn't work at all. Now let's say we just completely scrap this part here. Still does not work. Okay, so that branch never returns through, no matter what I do. Even though it does pick up the right physical material, it just does not return through, ever. Okay, so I guess I'm gonna have to do that onto a timer, as I feared I would be forced to do. So we're just gonna unplug that and create a timer. So move that somewhere. Okay, so create custom event, add a custom event, call it detect phys map like that. Have it cast a line trace by channel. Yep. Split that to get our values. Out hit physical material there. We should get the mesh, get the world location as a starting point for the trace. Then we should add -200, as I believe this is the length, the radius of the ball. Sorry about that. You know what, I'm actually gonna make it longer than that, just to be safe. So visibility, draw the bug type. I'm gonna turn that on. And now I did not set that timer. So at dig and play, what we're gonna do is set timer by event. Actually, I don't think that was the right one. Set timer by function name. Now, if you read the description, it can be a K2 function or a custom event. So it could be a function from that list. Like if you go into function and create a new function, you could use that. Or simply enter the name of the custom event, which we're gonna copy and paste. And we're gonna make it happen with a delay of 0.2 seconds, which means it'll happen twice, 5 times every seconds. And so if we're getting 60 FPS, instead of happening 60 times per second, as it would onto the even thick, it'll only happen 5 times. And so this will have a much smaller impact onto the performances. And so that's why I was actually telling you, if you're not doing some loopings, you shouldn't be using the even thick at all. So as you can see, our timer is working, as I can see the trace. And it is still not returning true at all, for some strange reasons. Why is this never returning true? And why does it assume that because it's a Boolean value, it's not the thing I want to print onto the screen? Duration 0. So that string is just gonna tell me, oh yeah, that'll need to be 0.2 actually, because it happens every 0.2 seconds as opposed to the even tick. So that is false. That is still false, even though it shouldn't be, which is really pissing me off. Because I know it's picking up the physical material. See? Ground concrete, ground slowdown. Oh, Jesus. Okay, I get it. Ground slowdown. Is this the name of the material? No, it really is the name of the physical material. ground slow. Okay, phew. For a second I thought it was giving me the name of the material instead of the name of the physical material. But no, it's actually right. Okay. Oh, and that's exactly the problem. I was comparing it to M slowdown, which is the white material and not the physical material. So ground slowdown. And now that should work just fine. Yay, see? We just went from 50 to 25 and then boop, back to 50. And so we effectively slow down the player when he rolls onto that material to 25 instead of 50, as you can see on the top left. And yet the speed buff is still working as intended. Great. Great, 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 great. Okay. And so that means I could have left it into the event hit. Sorry about that. Because, my equal here was wrong, and that's the reason it wasn't working. It wasn't actually because of the event hit. But yeah, having it onto a timer is a good habit as well. Because as I mentioned, the event hit is triggering off every frame, basically, just like the event tick. And so I think you should try to have as least code as possible onto this event for that reason. So we're still gonna leave it onto the timer, even though we could put it back here. So now that this works, and that this surface type slowdowns the player as intended, we're gonna remove all of the debug stuff, because we know it's working now. So yeah. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, one little problem though. Jeez. This is casting straight down. And so if the ball is rolling onto a wall, and that wall has that surfaces, the ball won't know about it. So I think we should use a sphere trace instead of a line trace for that reason. So sphere trace. Oh, no, we can't. Because last time I checked, the sphere trace only collide with the sphere. Like the ball mesh, even though it shouldn't, because I have ignore self-checked. Like the sphere trace is just broken. So okay, I'm gonna have to use the hit event, even though I don't like to. Right there, because yeah, the line trace is only checking down, and this is not good because we're not necessarily having the surface re-roll into beneath the ball, so we can't rely on that. And okay, we're back to what we had at the beginning. All I had to do was make the equal node check for the right stuff. That was a really stupid mistake. Now you can see that this worked because see how low it gets? Like it doesn't really go super high into the slope, and that is because it's going really slow. Because when we had the yellow one, it was actually going all the way to the top because it was going faster. So if we just stop there, go up, you can see it's going much higher because it's going much faster. So that's how we know that it actually works. So okay, I'm actually gonna put the slowdown material everywhere, just because it's so much less flashy than the yellow. And then boom, you're going faster, and boom, you're going even faster. Nope. Actually, the speed buff ain't working at all when you're getting the speed buff onto a slowdown material. That would require us